Public support for community mental health centers is the chief focus for the community mental health workers and volunteers gathered here in Dallas. One of the major speakers addressing the group on this topic is Texas Deputy Commissioner for Mental Health, Dr. Gary E. Miller. How does a community mental health professional keep from becoming too political, and is that a danger to the whole program, becoming politically involved?
Well, a program has to be balanced. The question is often raised, how much time should professionals in a center spend out in the field in their consultation education program, and how much should they spend back at the center in direct treatment of patients? Well, I don't think it's an either-or proposition. It's got to be both. To be a community mental health center, one has to be actively involved in reaching out to other agencies and to people in need and involvement in social issues, and it also has to be involved with direct treatment of people who are sick. And I think the director of the center and the philosophy of the board that's responsible for the center has to make this decision. But I think that one still must be considerably broader in this approach than in traditional mental health facilities.
Have some of these programs been destroyed by political battles? Is that a very, very real danger?
I think it's a possibility. I know of none specifically which have been destroyed, but then it's a fairly new movement.
Over 100 workers and professionals from across the state are gathered here for the two-day meeting, the group's 37th annual conference. Teel Salaun reporting.
We ran out of gas in the fourth quarter. Jackson State, who had an exceptional backfield of backs that were well over 240 pounds, three of them who kept coming straight at us and wore us out by the fourth quarter.
You keep scheduling these big guys, don't you? How about your own ball club as far as size is concerned?
Well, our ball club is much smaller. We depend on speed and agility. We're hoping that our freshman crop that came in this year, we've got a few boys of a fair size. We hope they'll be able to help us before the season's over.
It's altogether possible that when commissioners promised salary equity to deputy sheriffs, they opened up a can of worms that by now they just as soon stay closed, because they've been trying in vain for 3 weeks, meeting with city officials to figure out just exactly how they're going to classify deputy sheriffs in jobs equal to those in the Dallas Police Department. It's the city police department that the salaries are supposed to be equal to, and so far commissioners have not been able to come up with an answer. This has led to fears among sheriff's deputies that the proposed salary pay raises, which have not yet come down, might be pigeonholed or canceled or perhaps just forgotten. Commissioners say this is not the case. They're working as hard as they can. One meeting with city officials to determine how to classify deputy sheriffs is occurring this afternoon. But the fact remains that regardless of how much commissioners promise, the color of money has not yet reached the Dallas County Courthouse, and in some cases that could amount to as much as $200 a month. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News.
I don't think there's any simple solution to it. I think it's a complex problem of the interplay of perception, experience, words, and ideas, and that in solving particular problems, you've got to take all those elements into account at once. And that's what makes it so difficult, I think.
Do you see a way of solving it?
I think in general there are no solutions for the interesting question.
Are you saying then that we will never be able to communicate with other people until there's one language?
Never be able to communicate perfectly, never be able to communicate as well as we should like. We have to keep on trying, knowing that we'll never succeed completely.
Would one language solve the problem?
No, not in my judgment. I think the international languages, useful as they are all oversimplifications. I mean, they're useful for commercial or diplomatic purposes, but when it's a matter of one human being trying to talk to another, one needs the full resource of language, and this means a language like English or Russian or French, which has a history behind it and a culture and a literature.
My father was what you might say a strict disciplinarian, and he didn't realize that sometimes too much discipline can cause rebellion rather than introduce discipline into the home. And it just, my personality, the way I was, caused me to rebel and seek out the things which were more or less forbidden, and my natural curiosity also helped in that area. I had heard of the hippies, etc., smoking marijuana, things like this, and so one day someone brought some over to where I was living after I had left home and said, "Do you want to try it?" And I said, well, I'd heard about it, so I decided to try it. And when I did, I discovered it wasn't what all it had been built up to be, and so I liked it and I continued using it.
Are you still using it now?
No, I'm not.
How long have you been away from it?
Since about end of June or beginning of July.
What made you get off it?
I had been growing steadily tired of it. It had kind of lost its thrill. And so I had been meaning, to stop, but I just never gotten around to it. And then one day I injected a quarter tab of sunshine acid and had a bad pyrogenic reaction, and that was just sort of the last straw. And so I said this was the time, and so I quit.
What do you expect to do now with your life?
I'm going to go to school. I'm majoring in biochemistry, get a degree. I'm working right now, finally, for the first time in months, and just go to school and try to exist until I can get out and start doing some useful work.
What advice, were you to give advice to parents in your own parents' situation now with a young child at home, what advice would you have for them?
For the parents, mainly, I would say, instead of trying to discipline your children through spanking or pain-type syndromes, rationalize with them. Explain why you don't want them to do something. Explain that we have laws, and it's much to their disadvantage to break them. As far as experimentation with drugs, I don't think there's really much you can do, because if the child runs across them, he's more or less likely to try them. But if you can induce, and I don't mean through pain, but through rationalization, enough fear of the law and the consequences, that'd be about the only way you could stop the child from continuing. But they're bound to experiment if they run across it, if they're so inclined to be curious enough.
How about education on the part of the parents?
I would advise the parents to, rather than reading pamphlets such as I've seen, and about 90% of what I've seen are absolutely ridiculous on drugs, rather than reading these, go out and talk to the people that use them, find out why they use them, and try to, if they really want them to stop, try to remove the desire for using them.
Roger, what about this thing that you wrote, roller skating with a buffalo? Were you serious when you wrote that?
I was stoned when I No. I was serious. It's a philosophical sort of song. It says that you can be happy in life if you make up your mind to do just that. I wish I could follow my own philosophy, but it just says there are some things you can't do, but one thing in life that you can do is be happy if you just make up your mind to do it.
Roger,
you can't roller skate in a buffalo herd. Yeah.